Loading. Let's review. Where is it? Here. So yeah, concentric, sectoral, and multiple nuclei. Those are the predominant or popular models of like trying to analyze how patterns develop. And really, that's one of the key skills you need to have, not just in urban planning, but also in architecture, like looking for patterns in your building, spatial planning, et cetera, et cetera. And really, the reason why is we want to have buildings that last long, that are sustainable, and like contribute to society. So over here, last time we talked about how numbers are not the only, are not the on are only part of the larger picture, and they help identify some patterns, but not all. So, as we talked about last meeting, Kyoto having a population of 27,000 at a very small site of 0.76. And if we use like a simple density equation, it won't work because the numbers don't add up. But in general, density is useful for most scenarios. But once the numbers come up like this, where the total population is 27,000, but the density says there's 36,000 people per kilometer square, then you know there's something wrong. So in general, if you Google most like websites or like articles would list down the site area and population of that city or barangay or municipality in their respective websites. So just looking over here in our group, I think I missed a few barangays. The most populous barangay in Cebu province is Guadalupe at 70,000, probably also the most populous barangay in the whole region 7. And then over here, we have some city comparisons. We have Doha City, just because we have that one student from Doha, and comparing that with the population of like the three big cities in the Philippines, Cebu, Manila, and Davao. So Manila has the highest density, also because of the highest population in the whole Philippines, while I think Davao City has one of the higher site areas at 2,400 square kilometers. And just for comparison, I added this list of cities from America. So the most populated city in America is New York with 8 million people. That's about almost 8 times more than Manila. And then with a total square kilometer area of not square, yeah, square kilometer area of 1,224. So that gives you an idea of how big this thing is. Manila City is only 42 square kilometers. Cebu City is only 291 square kilometers. And then New York is only half as big as the boundary of Davao City. So there's that comparison. The closest in terms of population, Philippines and America that I like based on this list is the city of Phoenix at 1,600,000 people. That's kind of close to Manila's 1,800,000 people. Then Cebu City is probably likely similar to Austin with 900,000 people and about 846 square kilometer area. But interestingly, over here, they separated the land area and the water area. So if we take out the water area, New York City only has, what do you call this? Let's see, square kilometers of land area, 778 square kilometers. So it's closer to Cebu City area, which is at 200, maybe 300 square kilometers. Manila City is only at 42 square kilometers. It's a very tight, very dense city. Phoenix is at 2.8 square kilometers in area, and Austin is at 17 square kilometers in area. So once you take away the area of the water, the numbers become a lot more closer to Philippine numbers. So this might be a good way to sort of analyze foreign cities, like look at the land area, and maybe when we try to imitate or copy ideas, let's look at the situation more intently than just population and land area, but also like what's going on there physically. So this is what we discussed last meeting. Just like I did some updates here, so you can see Poblacion with the better pictures. Unfortunately, there's not so much good pictures for Barangay Kiyot. and then I put into text the strengths and weaknesses. And then one thing that in our class we don't really feel is the need for food security because most of us are fortunate enough to attend university, so very likely we have no problems with food security. Quick updates on the maps here, listing down the different cities, provinces in the regions. And then I made an error when I said water supply earlier, last meeting. This is actually water supply for washing. And the numbers here that says 43% water supply, this is for washing, not drinking. So, and this is like a total percentage of water being used for washing and not the kind of amount of water being used for washing. So out of the 100% that's water being used for washing, 43% comes from the toilet. So we don't have a definite number of how much what they call this access Filipino families have to water for washing and what do you call this? Um, on the other hand, the access to toilets, I think, is a more accurate representation of like how many people in NCR, for example, have access to toilets. Same thing here for. Oh wait, I didn't change the name. It says Central Visayas. This is Region 9. No, 11. Sorry, Davao. Davao. Okay, so that's just catching up there, updating our maps here. And then we ended off with this was my last slide last meeting. So I updated the slides to include the development plan. And then in the development plan, we didn't really have time to discuss it in depth last meeting, but I want to like spend some time on this today. So there's 16 goals. So ensure responsive, people-centered, technology-enabled, and clean governance, pursue swift, fair, and humane administrations of justice, promote Philippine culture and values towards bayanihan, expand opportunities across regions, expand economic opportunities, including the digital economy, maintaining macroeconomic stability and promoting competition like between businesses, transform human capital development towards greater agility, etc., etc. So I'm not, it's all here on the screen, so you just review it later. One thing I want to point out is that these goals are very vague, and it would be okay because it's more on the national level. But it's a good idea to download a copy of this plan. And really, I think the thing we should be focusing on is what they call this, the social side and the sort of built environment side. Economics is very tricky. So I really introduced that at the master's level. I mean, it's tricky even for me, so I don't want you guys to get like hung up on it. But if you want to, it's being explained in this document as well. So um, at the sort of summary page, it just lists down these 16 goals. And then when you go inside the document, they sort of list down how to achieve these goals. But for me personally, these like methods of achievement are still not specific enough because if you look here, how do they plan to achieve, or how do we plan to achieve as a country, the Philippines, responsive and proper governance? So they have like four sub goals. So this feels like reading a undergraduate thesis. So what are their sub goals? Participatory governance, broaden, seamless service delivery, ensured, smart and resilient public organizations, and future-ready public servants develop, public accountability and integrity strengthened. So just reading that, it just feels like a bunch of words that don't really mean anything because they're so vague. Participatory governance broaden. And if you go here, and this is just me ranting a bit, but it says proactively seek citizens' perspectives for responsive government interventions. Like, how do they do that? So I think it's mentioned further in the document. So I'm thinking they're going to need to do some engagement programs, ensure public access to transparent strategic risk communication. So what does that mean? So it's still vague. Intensify organizational and electoral reform. So intensify. So it's basically adjective and a bunch of like a organization, electoral. So it feels very unsubstantial. So this is the kind of objective writing that personally I don't like because it's very vague. So how do they improve this? Number one, like just improve the language to be more kind of accessible to lay people, or like those who are not familiar, or basically the thing that the Australian teachers or the what they call this tips for good teaching or like good writing, they always tell us is write as if you're talking to a child, like make it as simple as possible. And this thing is a lot messy, very messy. But if we go to something that we understand like architecture and housing, it's a little bit better. So this is one of the goals: safe, resilient, and sustainable communities built to be built. So three sub goals. Public health goals in the design of human settlements are integrated. So enforce strict compliance with building design standards that consider public health goals. So building design standards, we all know what that is, but they don't specifically say which one of those standards or what are those standards saying. Mainstream local shelter planning that integrates public health goals in the comprehensive land use plans of cities and municipalities. So what are those public health goals? What is that framework? But over here in housing production that incorporates hazard and health standards that are to be accelerated, they have a mention of a document called the National Urban Development and Housing Framework. So if anyone wants to do a thesis on housing, affordable housing, this will be your document to review. So basically, I took a quick look at it. I can show you actually here, housing framework. Housing framework. Oh crap! It doesn't seem to have saved. It's like it's saved in another file name, but it lists down like what are the new sizes, how much should it be, what are the materials, or something like that. So that's a little bit better. Strictly monitor implementation of risk-based public health standards in housing and urban development related activities. Include production of safe, livable, and resilient housing in COVID-19 recovery and resiliency program. So adopt viable land acquisition approaches, etc. So this one is a little bit better. It's more wordy, but at least there's like some specific thing that they're referring to, not just like a lofty idea of we want to make good houses. How do you how do you make good houses? Implement innovative housing finance and finance modalities. So yeah, that's good. Innovative finance modalities, but like what specific how do you is it like per month plan basis, per year plan basis? What's going on here? Strengthen primary mortgage markets and develop more secondary ones. So more secondary ones. So this is where it's like starting to break down, but it's a start. At least there's some direction, especially like the mention of the Balay program, the Building Adequate, Livable, Affordable, and Inclusive Filipino Communities program. So makes sense, Balay meaning house. This will be handled by the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. So yeah, I'm sure this would have a website and hopefully it works. But for the most part, most of the websites I've used to gather this data work. So this is from the NEDA website. The only thing that doesn't work is the investment program page. For some reason, it's really not working. Anyway, so another interesting table here that can be seen in the 2017-2022 development program is their sort of history of targets and accomplishments. So they have here a target of, let's say, GDP, number one. Baseline value per year as of 2016 is 7.1 GDP growth rate. So their targets for 2017, 2018, and 2019 are listed here, somewhere between 7 to 8% growth rate. And then the accomplishment, at least you can tell it's truthful because they show that they failed. The 2019 GDP growth rate is only 6.1%. This is probably due to the pandemic. So over here is a graph of showing how the World Economic Outlook, what do you call this, was affected by COVID-19. So you can see here in dark blue is the world performance. Light blue is the ASEAN 5 countries' performance. Orange, emerging and developing Asia. I think we that's where the Philippines is, and yellow is China. So you can see a big dip in 2019 and 2020. So it even goes below zero, so meaning negative growth rate. So it's actually receding. So basically, all the entire world, the emerging and developing countries in Asia and ASEAN 5 went down the 0%. So it went to the negative. The only country that didn't in this graph, the only place that didn't experience a negative growth was China. But still, it went down from let's say about stable 6% growth rate down to almost like 1% growth rate. So that's how big of an economic impact the pandemic had. So if you don't feel that impact, then we are like in the lucky few. Let's see here. Poverty incidence is reduced. For the most part, it was 23.5 in 2015, and it got reduced to 16.7 in 2018. So we need to like further read up on what makes up the poverty incidence, like what is the factors involved, how do you measure it. So maybe if you want architecture that reduces poverty, like we could look into this. Unemployment rate is decreased. So in 2016, it was 5.4. In 2019, now it's 5.1. It's only a zero point 0.3 decrease, but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. For at least it's maintained. The idea is like I think it's impossible to have a zero unemployment rate, and it really depends on like how they measure it in the first place. What are their like factors? Employment generated had increased from, let's say, they don't have a baseline value for 2016, but their target was 900 million to 1.1 million new employment or like new jobs. So in 2019 we got 1.27 million new employment generated. So that's good. And then finally, the investment programs. I really want to discuss about like how government gets its income, because that's really something that really interested me growing up, and I really didn't know how that worked. So in general, the investment program is funded by taxes and also foreign investment. What are the types of taxes? There's national taxes and local taxes. So since the investment program page wouldn't load, it kept on giving me the 403 forbidden error. So I had to look it up from the Department of Budget and Management page. And basically, there are several kinds of national taxes and local taxes. So national taxes, this applies to everywhere in the Philippines. Estate tax, this is like for land ownership. Documentary stamp tax for like when you apply for permits, etc. Business tax, capital gains tax, income tax, withholding tax, value added tax. I'm sure everyone's familiar with this. Excise tax, donors tax, etc. The local taxes, this will be applied in like municipalities and LGUs, franchise tax, basic real property tax, sand, gravel, and other quarry resources tax, businesses of printing and publication tax, annual field tax for delivery trucks and vans, professional tax, that's like for anyone like doctors, architects, anyone like with a professional license, you'll be taxed. Amusement tax, community tax, barangay tax, and barangay clearance tax. I missed one word there. Barangay clearance tax. So just to like give you an idea of how many kinds of taxes there are. And you might think, now that's a lot of taxes. Why do we need that much? So hopefully, when you were doing your design and we're trying to reach a budget, you can tell how expensive a building actually is. Some of my students from my group, their budgets based on their square meter averages, they would very easily for a 55 classroom building with all the biology and faculty rooms, very easily reach 200 million pesos worth of construction costs. That's just construction. That's without labor. So with labor, it will be an additional 50%. So for a building that size, let's say 170 square meters, was it 170,000? I think something like that. Oh, wait, where is it? 170. I think it's 170, something like that. Anyway, for your 55 classroom building, very easily you'll get up to like if it's a very big building like 300 million, 400 million, and even 500 million pesos. So every cent is like important. And the challenge with the Philippines is those cents are not being properly managed. So I want you guys to be aware of that as you go on move to our next course in AR 3233, because I think there's most of you are passing in this class, so there's really no problem with that. Okay, so this is just from the. Oh wait, did I write down where this is from? This is from the primer of the Department of Budget and Management. Let me check. Yeah, forgot to put in the link here. Yeah. So this is the official like statement of where local sources of tax revenue comes from. So they are in what they call this legalized by the Republic Act number 7160, compulsory contributions to finance government operations. So taxes are computed at the rate established by law to a defined base such as income, estate, imports, exports, foreign exchange, etc., without any direct relation to the services rendered or to the individual assessed. So to make it like fair and unbiased. So you can see here transfer of real property ownership tax. So where is this applied? It's provinces, yes, cities, yes, municipalities, no, and then municipality within the metropolitan Manila area. So metropolitan Manila area, that's a tongue twister. So it's applied yes to all of like Manila, and some of it is like conditional for municipalities and cities and even provinces. So it really depends on what's there. Um, okay. And just like a quick background on the Bureau of Budget and Management, it was established in around the 1930s and has been around since then. And hopefully they'll continue practicing properly. And just like to give you guys an idea of what a budget looks like, this is their format prepared by a planning officer, a budget officer, and a local chief executive. So you have the reference code for the general services, whatever services they need here, program activity description, implementing office, start date, completion date, expected outputs, funding source, personal services, maintenance, and other operating expenses, capital total, climate change adaptation. I don't know what this is. I think this is a new one because they're including it in their budget. Then over here is a actual budget from Region 2. I couldn't find anything from the national level, so I started looking at the regional level. And then this is for their enhancing the social fabric, and their budget amounted to like about 900 million pesos. So that includes assistance for disadvantaged municipalities, assistance for municipalities empowerment, improve LGU competitiveness, and then support conditional matching grant, blah, blah, blah. So this is where it gets a bit tricky because these definitions are still a bit more vague than I would like. So just like personal preference, but what does assistance to municipalities include? So all local development councils are fully functional. Local development investment plan, 100% of ADM projects with third-party monitors, establishment to ADM portal, CSCOs, and capacitated on ADM. So that's 60 million pesos for that investment cost. And annual investment target is like about 10 million per year. So I think they just kept on adding it. So yeah, it's still very fuzzy to me how that works. So that's 60 million for the entire region 2. And then how many municipalities are there? And then how many people are working for those municipalities? So that number gets used up very quickly. Anyway, so that's a wrap up on the physical framework plan, the development plan, and the investment programs. Now let's continue on to zoning. So maybe I'll just cut this up into a different video so it's not so long. And I don't have to like keep on, what do you call this,